This is ethical scenario number 4 by Nathan Andrus, Ellen Gleason, and Paige Johnson. Our scenario says, as a public librarian in a conservative town, you learn that a controversial author is embarking on a book tour. You know that you have a small but loyal following of patrons who love this author. Do you invite the author to speak at your library, knowing that there will be many patrons upset to the point of public protest? We will start with some reasons why we would not want to invite the author. Libraries are not a place to shy away from controversy, but they play an important role in making their patrons feel safe and comfortable using their services. This ethical scenario emphasizes the fine line information professionals walk when balancing the multitude of opinions and interests in their communities. Although librarians should strive to not let fear of controversy impact their collections or programming, it is also important to consider many points of view. This may mean setting aside personal opinions and instead gauging interest in a program from the patrons themselves before taking a risk that would upset many people in the community. Of course, we cannot bring up this topic without discussing the idea of censorship. Could it be a necessary evil? While not inviting the author may be perceived as censorship, the act of censorship in itself is unavoidable in the information profession. As Library Director Charlene Kane explains, librarians censor every time they take under consideration the opinions of a single group or include their personal beliefs in the collection, development, or deselection process. What library services do people value most? The important factor to keep in mind when considering risky events or programming in a library is how it would impact the majority of the organization's users. This involves identifying the parts of the library that the community values and uses the most. If a facility cannot be depended on to provide a certain variety and quality of service, it no longer serves its purpose. To illustrate this idea, here is a graph from a survey that was done among Americans ages 16 plus who have used a public library, where they responded to what are the most important services at a library. The responses indicated that access to books and media, having assistance from librarians, and having a quiet, safe space were the three most noted features that users value. When weighing the risks of new, potentially controversial events, the professional must evaluate how the worst-case scenario, a public protest, would impact users' ability to utilize valuable library features. After all, we do not want a scenario like the following video to occur in our libraries.
This is library.
This took place at the University of Washington Library. People were protesting the inauguration of Donald Trump. This is an example of how allowing protesters into our libraries could disrupt services for other patrons. Do we want to invite this type of controversy to our libraries? Okay, let's talk about why we should invite the author to our library. Kate Messner said, "When we decide a book is inappropriate for a school library because it deals with a tough subject, we're telling kids in that situation that their problems can't even be talked about." We could, of course, replace the word book with a display, an author, a visit, or anything of that nature. Anne Carroll Moore, the pioneer of children's librarianship, coined this phrase, "the right book for the right child at the right time." We can adapt that to this discussion by saying, the right author for the right reader at the right time. Returning to the idea of censorship, how does the American Library Association view censorship? They say, intellectual freedom is the right of every individual to both seek and receive information from all points of view without restriction. It provides for free access to all expressions of ideas through which any and all sides of a question, cause, or movement may be explored. Intellectual freedom encompasses the freedom to hold, receive, and disseminate ideas. Speaking further on intellectual freedom, the American Library's policies say, books and other library resources should be provided for the interest, information, and enlightenment of all people in the community the library serves. Materials should not be excluded because of the origin, background, or views of those contributing to their creation. They also say, libraries which make exhibit spaces and meeting rooms available to the public they serve should make such facilities available on an equitable basis, regardless of the beliefs or affiliations of individuals or groups requesting their use. Very plain language there. Regardless of the beliefs or affiliations, they should be made available on an equitable basis. Well-intentioned censorship is still censorship. Critchfield and Powell discovered that 2 circulation employees were canceling reservations on an item and then checking the item out to themselves in order to keep it from circulating because they deemed it inappropriate. This led to the termination of the 2 employees, which led to a backlash from the public. The public was encouraged to voice their concerns at the library's monthly board meeting. Many of the library's supporters included a woman recounting how limitations at her childhood library stifled her growth as a reader, and another person sharing her minister father's strong belief in the First Amendment and urging others to stand up for it. Critchfield and Powell noted that another thing to remember is that public libraries serve all members of a community, and it is important to listen to every citizen's concerns. The Jessamine County residents who expressed displeasure over the materials in the collection or the dismissal of the employees were a minority of the county's total population, but we listened to their current concerns and suggestions. Another example comes from middle school librarian Karen Perry. Perry arranged for a visit from the author Ellen Hopkins. Just before the visit, a parent of one of the students at her middle school lodged a complaint about Hopkins' book and the upcoming visit. Hopkins' visit was eventually moved from the school to a college auditorium. Perry wrote about this experience, saying, "Needless to say, her presentation was wonderful and enjoyed by all who attended. Unfortunately, there weren't many of my middle school students in the audience. The students that were there thoroughly enjoyed the opportunity to hear Ellen Hopkins speak about her life, her writing, and her books. I am in total support of parents submitting a request for reconsideration if there is a book they don't like in the library collection. They have the right to go through the process." And here's perhaps Karen Perry's most important point. What they don't have the right to do is to dictate what other children, we could also say other patrons, can and can't read or can and can't listen to in the case of an author visit. Thank you for watching our presentation. The majority of the research was done by Paige Johnson, researching for the author visit, and Ellen Gleason, researching against the author visit. This presentation and recording was created by Nathan Andrus. The handout was designed by Ellen Gleason. Thank you.